Hi, I'm Steve Pleich, and I'll be your host for this segment of Voices from the Village. You know, CTV and community TV itself is a wonderful thing. It's an opportunity to bring new people and new ideas to the community, to introduce some concepts that maybe are going to broaden our horizons as a community. One of the shows that's done this for a long period of time is Voices from the Village. You're watching this evening. We're live for an hour between 7 and 8 o'clock. This program has been on community TV for 18 years. I've been privileged to be a host for the last couple of years, along with my good friend Sandino Gomez. And this is the first show of the year, and I think it's an appropriate time to pause just for a second and recognize two people who have made this possible for such a long period of time. Our producers, Charlie and Betsy Phillips, who I've had the great pleasure to work with over the last couple of years, are really the driving force behind this program, a program that brings to our community the very ideas and personalities that we'll be talking about with our guests this evening. So I just wanted to say for myself, for the people here in the studio, for all the people working here, and for a grateful community. Thank you to Charlie and Betsy Phillips. Thank you for everything you were doing and everything you've done. We look forward to another wonderful year of Voices from the Village. And I just wanted to recognize Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. Charlie and Betsy. Well done. Tonight, in that spirit, we have two folks who are the founders of group called Project Pollinate. It's a very exciting group in town. Project Pollinate, and I'll just read from their brochure just a bit, believes that when people unite, they can affect real change, and that existing systems can only be changed from the bottom up. But joining me this evening, great pleasure to introduce Dennis Etler. Dennis, welcome.
Thanks.
And Drew Glover. Drew, welcome to the show. Dennis, you've been with us several times on different shows. You've been on Human Rights Here and Now. You've done a couple of shows with me on privacy and surveillance. So welcome back as a veteran. Just kind of reintroduce the community to you, give us a little bit of your background and kind of what you've been doing in the community as an activist and organizer in past years.
Okay, well, it's only within the last 4 or 5 years that I've gotten re-engaged in social justice work. I was, and still am, an instructor at Cabrillo College and involved in, other activities. And now that I have more free time, I've reached retirement age and whatnot, so I wanted to get back involved in the community. And I've been involved in a number of organizations locally. I'm on the board of SCORE, Santa Cruz County Coalition to Combat Racism, and also on the board of the UNA, the United Nations Association. I've been active in organizing various activities and rallies and whatnot over the last few years, involved to a certain extent with the Occupy movement, even though I was teaching full time and had just not that much time to devote to that. But now that I have more opportunity to do so, I want to do what I can to help move things forward.
Terrific. And Drew, you and I have come to know one another through activism in Santa Cruz. Of course, you've been the organizer for several recent racial and social justice marches and events that really have raised awareness in Santa Cruz about the very serious issues, I think, of social and economic justice that we're all working toward. Introduce yourself as kind of the first time here on Voices, and hopefully not the last. Hopefully you'll be with us many times in the future. Just tell people a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, well, I'm 29 now, but I was born and raised here in Santa Cruz. I didn't really get activated into understanding the realities of things that are going on negatively in the world that affect people until I was like 18 when I took my first course in college at Cabrillo. So since then, though, I've been doing work here and there. I was a photographer for many years, which gave me the opportunity to observe a lot of people, which really got me interested in getting communities engaged, as well as realizing how many people out there really don't know what's going on, because I would have these conversations out while I was photographing individuals, and the I don't know answer would always come up whenever talking about things, when I would ask them questions about what was going on in the world and everything. So about 2013, I decided to leave the world of photography and move it more towards a hobby side of things, so that I could reinvest my time into the community of Santa Cruz, because I realized specifically, most recently when I was coordinating the social justice conference at Cabrillo last April, but even before then, realizing that there was so much going on in the community that was there to benefit individuals, but no one knew about it, trying to find different ways to engage the community, participate in outreach and coordinate people so that we can make sustainable and lasting change here.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit, but
Good.
yeah.
All right. And I'll remind our viewers that this is a live show, live call-in show. In fact, you can reach us at 425-8848, extension 30, extension 30. So if you have a question for either Dennis or Drew, please do call in. Drew, let's stay with you. You're the founder and the executive director of Project Pollinate. Very exciting. We just came from a kickoff party. You had an India Joe's, a full house over there, a very young, energized, dynamic. Tell us about Project Pollinate. Start us off. Give us a thumbnail, and we can get into some of the, the many different aspects of it as we go along. But just give us an overview.
Yeah, thanks. There's like you said, there's a lot that goes into Project Pollinate itself. The main goal of it, though, is to act as a bridge-building organization, as well as a source of education for the community. Throughout my travels and my experience here in Santa Cruz, I realized that there was a big need for a group that worked to do the outreach and the coordination of the people in Santa Cruz to maximize people's voices.
Yeah.
So in that respect, we really designed the organization around community education and awareness, but also as a avenue or a tool for other organizations here locally to use so that we can help them to support their causes, as well as to do things to raise awareness about their causes, and also invite the community to get involved with different activities and actions that they may not have known about or believe in.
Right. And Dennis, you're the chair, of course, of the board of directors, and are intimately involved in the development of this particular project. Tell us about Project Pollinate from your point of view and how you are engaging and moving this forward.
Right. Well, excuse me. I first met Drew. He was in one of my classes. As mentioned, I'm a anthro instructor at Cabrillo College, and he was in my class and approached me to see if I would be interested in being a faculty advisor for both the Justice League, the club that he formed, the Social Justice Club on Cabrillo campus, and the 8th annual Social Justice Fair, which I had participated in previously, but the faculty had rather stepped back from it last year, and Drew basically filled in the breach. And so the two of us, primarily Drew was the organizer, did successfully put that together, and it was a very, successful event. But that's what galvanized us to thinking about the need for something of that sort that would be ongoing and community-based. So that was sort of the inspiration for what we have put together. And as Drew mentioned, one of the major aspects is to basically try to bring the diverse group of social, economic, and environmental justice groups together in town.
Right.
It's always been a concern of mine that there's a lot of activity going on in Santa Cruz around a variety of issues, but people seem to be very fragmented. They're interested in, say, environmental justice, like the anti-GMO movement.
Right,
or
of course, which is very robust in Santa Cruz.
And the 350,
.org people.
climate change initiative, and there's any number of groups of that sort, but they don't seem to really communicate with one another or coordinate their activities in any way.
Right.
And I've always thought that it would be very good to have some way of creating a greater sense of cohesion here locally, so these groups can support one another.
Of course, yeah.
One idea was to have a quarterly coordinating committee meeting where representatives from organizations and concerned citizens could come together, exchange their ideas and experiences, both positive and negative, so people can learn from one another and establish contact with one another, and as Drew said, also supply resources, logistical support for groups. Many groups in town, they have limited resources. And hopefully we can supply volunteers or other sorts of material support to other groups that just don't have the personnel or expertise that we have access to. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet is that we're proposing a set of youth-oriented programs. And these programs are directed towards different age cohorts, but the primary purpose is to, as I like to say, educate, motivate, and activate youth.
Yeah, there you go.
The idea being that youth are not really being exposed to many of the issues that we are all confronting. It's touched upon in school, at various levels, but maybe not in depth,
Well, yeah,
And
true.
just to say, the other thing is to motivate the young people
right.
to want to take action to address some of these issues, and then supplying them with avenues by which they can.
Certainly.
So that's pretty much the vision we have.
And certainly there's a need for solidarity in town amongst the various groups that are working for social and economic justice, and also a need, in my view, for a kind of a sustainability, which you mentioned earlier. When we had the kickoff party today, one of the things that I wanted to impress upon the young demographic there was that was a great first day, a great first meeting, but you have to have that kind of a thing every day. You have to move forward every day and really make that kind of a cohesive strategy where you're all kind of engaged. I did want to mention before we move further into kind of the various programs, the Social Justice Conference, which is wonderful. I was involved for the ACLU, I think last year and perhaps the year before. Dennis certainly with SCORE was there, but make sure the audience knows that that's coming up in April, but tell us a little bit about that so we get a shout out for that and then we can move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Social Justice Conference at Cabrillo is an annual thing. This last one was the 8th, and this one coming up, which is scheduled for the end of April, will be the 9th consecutive Social Justice
Good for you,
Conference.
yeah.
And what it does is it gives the students a chance to understand what's going on in the community. It gives the organizations a chance to come out and inform the student body about the activities that are going on and the volunteer opportunities that are available to them. But most importantly, though, we have workshops and discussion forums. So people can come and listen to a speaker or a panel of speakers talk about certain issues that are important to them or that they're focusing on, but also gives them the opportunity to discuss amongst themselves and other people there their own thoughts and feelings, discuss opinions that they may agree or disagree with, which I think always makes the best discussion.
Of course.
Just overall have a really positive time. I know a lot of people this last year said that they hadn't been, because traditionally in the past, when you think social justice conference, you think people sitting in rooms and listening to speakers and then breaking for coffee and then coming back together, which is great if you're
That's fine,
if you're in a social justice
you like that.
or you're someone from a generation that prefers it a little slower. But what I realized, especially with my work doing photography and event production previously to this, was that we needed to find something that would bring different demographics out to engage them and entertain them while educating them at the same time. So I kind of changed the model up a little bit and made it so that instead of it just being workshops and speakers, we have an array of different activities for people to take part in, from the workshops to the discussion panels. We also have a music stage where we have musicians and artists come and speak. We have poets and spoken word artists come, and we also have dancers and performers that represent different cultural aspects of the community and stuff, just to come and make sure that everyone gets a really diverse picture of what's going on in Santa Cruz, but at the same time expose them to different things they may not have access to.
Right. And
Yeah,
it's always,
if I may
please,
interject a little bit, the idea of incorporating culture into progressive movements for social, economic, and environmental justice, I think is an idea whose time has come. Culture is instrumental in motivating people to get more engaged. So I think it's really important that that aspect of the work is emphasized and developed to a greater extent than it has been.
Yeah.
And the other benefit to the Justice Conference too, as you may have heard from some of the people that were at the kickoff party tonight, which I want to take a second and say thank you to India Joe.
Absolutely, shout out to India Joe.
If anyone gets a chance, fantastic Indian food, and for him to open up his space on the day that they're closed for us to have our kickoff dinner was beyond amazing.
Here.
But some of the people there are students at Cabrillo, who I either met through social justice classes and stuff like that, but there are students that don't know what's going on, and having the ability to go to this conference where there's all of the kind of activates them and gets them really engaged and excited, which is a lot of the people, or some of the people that are involved with the program we have right now.
And it's something that I noticed being at the social justice conference last year was the younger demographic, the infusion of that kind of younger energy. I think there are some groups around town who do this better than others. Food Not Bombs has a younger demographic. They've been able to incorporate young people, but it's always been of some concern to me why we haven't really been able to galvanize the youth and energy that's at UCSC or is at Cabrillo. Dennis, you saw what the youth and energy at Cabrillo can do firsthand as a professor there. You know, your experience with that. And that's the kind of thing I think that you really have to bring into any kind of a social and economic justice movement to really make it happen.
Well, that's really one of our goals. What we find is that, or at least in my discussions with members of various groups in town that have a, you know, sort of a older membership, is that they're really concerned that, you know, younger people aren't stepping up,
Right.
You know, to take on, you know, the duties and responsibilities that are needed to sustain these organizations into the future.
Right.
I mean, if you don't replenish, you know, the membership with young blood,
Right.
it's obviously going to wither on the vine. And also, being at Cabrillo, you know, there's a lot of people, younger people, who really do want to learn from their elders. They want to find out more about
Right.
the struggles, you know, that were engaged in the 60s and 70s, or
Of course.
even further back, you know, in time. So there's sort of a thirst for, you know, developing that type of connectivity between the younger and the older on both sides of the ledger.
Of course.
And that's another aspect of Project Pollinate, is to build the bridges to allow, you know, the younger members of our population to connect with the older, people who have the experience, and the younger set has the energy. And it's really important to bring the two together.
Yeah, and I think reading this very comprehensive syllabus that you have for your various programs, it's fascinating to see the kind of engagement you have across the spectrum. You know, from very young people to teens to older people. Let's just look at a couple of these, because I thought that was just fascinating. This project, this NEST, is meant to nurture youth so that they will mature into strong, healthy adults, sound in mind, body, and spirit. That's a wonderful program. And tell us a little bit about that aspect of that program.
Yeah, well, we wanted to come up with something that we could have available for kids. You know, we don't have an age-specific range for it, but we were thinking somewhere between K to 12.
Oh, okay.
You know,
Yeah.
Start earlier in life, but still in the NEST as it is.
Yeah, well,
just so everyone knows, NEST stands for Nutrition, Exercise, Scholastics, and Technology.
Yes, indeed.
And so
It's wonderful.
Fun acronyms.
Yeah.
So the goal with that and the purpose behind it is to get kids at a young age starting to think about nutrition, starting to think about sustainable, positive exercise habits,
Right.
so that they can feel good about themselves, they can be healthy, they don't have to worry about health complications moving forward in life. But at the same time, while nurturing a healthy body, it's really important to stimulate the mind, especially at such a young age when things are developing and you're getting introduced to new ideas. So that's why we included the scholastic side of things, going over reading and writing, where we'll be doing things that range in a variety of things from spoken word and poetry workshops.
With our good friend Isaac
our good friend-
Collins, the Lyrical Eye.
Isaac,
Shout out to
aka
him.
the
That's
Lyrical
Also,
Eye.
journal keeping.
Yeah, there you
Journal
go.
keeping with a local historian and nature docent named Ted.
Wonderful,
Edwards.
yeah.
Fantastic work going that way. And then to end it off with technology, since we live in such a technological world, people that don't have access to technology at a young age have a handicap when moving on into the rest of their life.
Right.
So providing a space where people can learn basic technology skills, beginner computer science, how to use Word and Excel so that they can manage
Absolutely,
and write
yeah.
reports and stuff like that, and not feel lost when they enter into a school or grade range where they're going to need to have access
No
or
question.
ability to use
Yeah.
computers.
Yeah, and there's other aspects to technology. Of course, there's video and audio,
Radio.
technologies that we can also introduce at a very young age.
Of course.
Young people, pick this stuff up
Yeah.
almost by symbiosis, you know, so.
Well, and
Not
it's
the right
interesting,
word, but-
case in point, as we were just getting ready for the show, Brian T. Schulman, who does BTS Present show here on CTV, his 3 kids are here, and they just love, you know, being around the technology.
Yeah.
You know, they're naturals for the
Yeah, I
camera,
meant to say
naturals for the
osmosis,
naturals for the technical aspect of it, naturals to understand the reach that it can have as they begin to develop and understand how it can help them as they move through their life. So that's a wonderful. Now, how are you going to be able to, how are you looking to recruit people to actually form the programs themselves? There must be some kind of structure to that.
Yeah, well, from the kickoff party that that we were all at tonight,
Right.
there were a lot of individuals there with the different skill sets like Isaac and other ones that are really motivated and interested to build these curriculums and get the kids going and everything. To get more people involved with the programs, of course, we're going to be doing outreach. We will be interacting with different volunteers, reaching out to other organizations as well, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's the key,
Right.
is that we would love to work with other organizations to make programs as effective and efficient as possible to try to get as many kids access to them as possible, because we
Of
know
course.
that one program in a town or city this big won't be able to sustain
Right.
all of the kids that are available to them. So, you know, trying to work together and make them as well-staffed and comprehensive as possible.
And Dennis, of course, with your experience as a teacher, you know, you are a teacher of folks, you know, so you know something
most
about
definitely.
that. Yeah.
Dennis is a fantastic teacher and a PhD, by the way, and
Yeah.
also Ted Edwards, the gentleman I was talking about that's going to be working on the journaling. He is a retired history teacher and educator here in Santa Cruz, and also writes historian novels and stuff about you know, World War II veterans and all that kind of stuff, and is amazing with the nature walks and all that logistics with being able to teach kids about nature and stuff. So a lot of knowledge with the group.
And I think it's now needed in Santa Cruz more than ever. I think even were Free School Santa Cruz still in existence, and it is, of course, now the late lamented Free School, where they really did a marvelous job in opening up people's opportunities and vistas to learn things, to become engaged, to do things in the community, to have the docents, nature walks, things like that. It's fortunate for us in Santa Cruz that Project Pollinate is here now, looking to establish a template, a model that's going to really kind of try to explore some of that kind of teaching and community engagement. I see another here. We'll look at another program that you have. This is LEAF. Language, Entrepreneurship, Activism, and Financial. Says LEAF aims to invest teens with the necessary skills to become self-sufficient, community-oriented adults. It said it's important to develop lifelong skills and attitudes early on so they can set the tone for one's transition to young adulthood. A wonderful mission statement for that.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that we know needs to be addressed, especially with teenagers and adolescents that are moving into adulthood. You know, something that I really you know, going back to education and schools here locally, public schools, the language, like I, for example, took Spanish for 4 years during high school, and I
Qué bueno.
barely understand Spanish now, but it was because it wasn't instilled in me from a really early age to really appreciate what knowing another language will do, and the kind of advantages it'll give you as an individual to be able to communicate with people outside of your birth language or whatever.
Of course.
So definitely think that language and expanding that knowledge for kids is really important to be able to open up that communication with people. And then moving on to entrepreneurship, knowing how to create a business, looking at business models, looking at the world, identifying a problem, and then figuring out a way to solve it, and making it so that you can get a bunch of other people involved, excited, work out a budget, build a business plan, and get it going.
Yeah. Just to interject a little bit, entrepreneurship is just not making money. What we mean by entrepreneurship is social entrepreneurship, where the entrepreneur is actually committed to elevating his community.
Because that comes next.
And contributing to it.
Because the A for leap activism, especially with the entrepreneurship,
Exactly.
is trying to make it so that
That's why we bring together entrepreneurship, activism, and financials, because we have this vision of entrepreneurship being in service to the community.
I don't think culturally we see those terms linked very often.
Entrepreneurship, activism, yeah, totally.
And I think that they somehow take on individual lives of their own, where I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not necessarily going to be a social or economic justice activist, or I'm not going to really, I may be involved in financials, but maybe I'm not expressing or, or developing my language skills. And I think it's important because California culturally has a wonderful diversity. Latina demographic will be the largest in California very soon, and we should have been for a long time bilingual. And I think at some point, because it behooves us all to really grow together as a state and a community, that we all are able to understand each other on that language, that linguistic level.
To add to that, one idea that I have is that this language component could be best served by pairing Spanish and English speakers, kids, teens, preteens, so that they can learn from each other, learn not only the basics of each other's language. Of course, the Spanish kids already know a lot more English than the English kids know Spanish.
No question, yeah.
But just so that, they can basically learn from one another, not only language, but the different cultures that they've been brought up in, so that there's a community of concern that develops between them.
And I think that unfortunately, even in Santa Cruz, we are separate communities. We are not a community of a whole, and we certainly should be. Santa Cruz itself is about 20% Latino Hispanic. The county is 30%. So there is that kind of community that exists separate and apart from one another. That I think is something that you folks are really looking at and saying, how can we become a community of one? How can we become a community that moves together?
Yeah, and by a community of one, we don't mean that people lose their cultural identity.
Of course not. Yeah.
The idea is that they share in their cultural identities.
Yeah.
Because that's one of our main kind of pushes, especially with getting people together with these conversations and learning from each other, is that when you interact with someone and talk to them and spend time with them, it gives you more of an ability to know compassion and empathy for them.
Right.
So you can kind of brush off these preconceived notions and stereotypes of people that you may or may not know just based on mass media or that one experience you had with someone that you had a negative one with. So really making it so that it opens people's eyes to the different practices and lifestyles within the community so that we can all operate together.
Well, and I think it's wonderful that during the kickoff party, your personal leadership style, and Dennis's as well, is one of inclusion. And it's one of everybody standing up saying, well, you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. So I stood up and I can tell them a little bit about myself. But everybody that was there, regardless of their reluctance to do so, if they had such, would stand up and say, I'm this man, I do this, that, and the other thing. That's the kind of thing that starts to break down those barriers you're talking about. That's the kind of thing that starts building community. And it was very evident at that one gathering, what the template, what the model of that was going to be, and I think it would be very successful. And let me move on to another one. This is wonderful acronyms you have for all these various programs, marvelously inventive. This one is Earth. It's environment, art, recreation, thoughtfulness, and holistics. His Project Earth is to engage young folks young adults in activities that build both self-worth and community involvement. Environmental awareness is a prerequisite for responsible local, national, and global citizenship in the 21st century. Wonderful mission.
Thank you.
And that is really something that we need. We live next door to the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. I myself has been a sanctuary steward with Save Our Shores for 5 years. I understand, what that stewardship means to the community, to me individually, and to our community of people who live here. So I think that's a terrific program. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, while NEST has to do with early education and all of that, and then we move into LEAF, which is more the business / language communication side of things. Earth is really to educate people about, like you said, the environment, as well as give them activities to do, ways to express themselves, and ways to achieve a level of spiritual health or emotional health that goes along with thoughtfulness, awareness of other people, awareness of yourself, your own body. That includes things from on the environment side of things, nature walks, plant identification, a bunch of different activities out in the woods to educate people about the environment that we live in and how beneficial or how much of a benefit we have and how lucky we are to live 15 minutes from the redwoods to the ocean and all of these different ecosystems that are operating within each other. Fantastic. And then we move into the arts because we have ballet teachers that want to really expand people's ability to dance and get engaged with low-cost dance or free dance classes for individuals and kids to kind of be able to go into a zone, kind of leave the outside world behind and lose themselves in the immersion of dance and movement and exercise. And then moving on to different recreational activities, which includes group mountain biking trips, as well as hikes. And then even into the thoughtfulness and holistics, which includes yoga classes, energy healing, meditation instruction, and everything so that people can really take a moment and look inside themselves and ask what they're doing that affects the planet, affects other people they interact with. Is there other actions, showing respect for everyone? Is it showing respect for the planet? Is it sustainable? Is it making it so that other people will want to be positive and learn from them, or kind of take a step back and look, am I doing something negative? Is there a reason that people are reacting the way to me that way?
And I think that meld of the spiritual and the appreciation for the physical world, the environment, is a Native American ethic. You get back to the kind of Native American, feeling of love and respect for the earth. And Dennis, as I've known you over time, you are not necessarily a religious person, but certainly a spiritual one, certainly a thoughtful one. And I think that you have an appreciation for the environment as well. So this is something that I think resonates with you as well.
I don't see myself in that light. Maybe it's a proper characterization, but I've never thought of myself as a spiritual person. But I do have appreciation for everything around me. For the world and its bounty. The universe and all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a privilege to be alive. So. In that respect, I fully support, those sorts of, activities. Mindfulness, thoughtfulness. I see mindfulness as better understanding oneself, and others, but thoughtfulness kind of extends that to caring for one's community in an active way. Mindfulness seems to be more inner-directed, while thoughtfulness, I think, is outer-directed.
Well, let me ask you this while we're on this subject. You are certainly a scholar on China, and I think that you understand the Chinese mindfulness and the Chinese spirituality, if you will, and the Chinese society itself, as well as anybody certainly that I have ever talked to. Did you bring some of that understanding, to Project Pollinate? Some of the things that you've learned as a scholar of Chinese culture to this?
Oh yeah, most definitely. A lot of my thinking is inspired by not only traditional Chinese culture, but the vast transformation that's occurring today in China. Unfortunately, most of our information about China is filtered through the corporate media, which totally distorts what's actually going on there. It's not to say that China is, a workers' paradise or, heaven on earth. There's nothing of the sort. China has all sorts of problems, very severe environmental problems, other very severe problems of social inequality, primarily because of the divide between city and countryside. But the thing is, they're actively developing and pursuing innovative ways to meet those challenges in a way that I don't see us doing here. China has a 21st century infrastructure that they're constructing in record-breaking time. And it's not shoddy. It's really state-of-the-art stuff. They're building high-speed rails all around the world now. And I could go on. That's not what we're talking about. But you brought it up.
And that is something that you certainly are. Your scholarship on that, I think, brings a lot of interesting perspective to the things that we talk about generally in terms of social and economic justice. And my thinking would be that in looking at a model, a template for a holistic program, that certainly this is something that is extremely inclusive in all aspects.
I really appreciate that you pointed out the Native American influence, because I have a lot of reverence and respect for Native American traditions and life practices. I spent some time out in Tahoe by the Yuba River on a beautiful piece of land called Stone Bear for about 2 months, and had a chance to be a part of some really beautiful spiritual gatherings and spiritual circles where we, praised the earth and for all of its bounties and everything. But we also practiced a really respectful, sustainable lifestyle there. And it was a community where communication was key. It was a council of individuals making decisions, shared thoughts, and people giving voices to people who they agree with, so that there's no power struggle, essentially, because your power is based on the amount of voices that you have and stuff like that. So definitely that played into a lot of the idea of trying to meld spiritual and environmental awareness. Because if you don't respect the earth, it's really hard to think about your spiritual connection to it, and vice versa. You could really love the earth but feel completely disconnected because you don't understand your place in it spiritually or physically, or the fact about stardust and how we're all made of stardust.
Right, there you go.
All the same stuff. So it's a pretty interesting approach, and I'm really looking forward to working with the energy healers, the meditation specialists, the yoga instructors, and the dance. Just everything within that, especially that program specifically. I think will have a lot of really beneficial outcomes for a lot of kids and adults here in Santa Cruz.
Well, and I think it's appropriate that you decided to have your kickoff party there at India Joe's, which is right adjacent to the 418 project, and they do a lot of the interpretive dance and the yoga and that kind of spiritual movement kind of thing, which I think is wonderful. Now, we've talked a lot about youth, and youth must be served, certainly, but the last final project program that I see in here is called Honey.
Yes, because honey never spoils.
Yeah, honoring older neighbors, eternal youth. The project Honey is meant to reconnect elders with emerging generations within the community. We live in a society and culture which has fragmented, atomized, and separated us from one another. In traditional societies, the young and the old are bound together in a social nexus. Dennis, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Just exactly. Actually, those are my words.
So, there you go. And how appropriate it is that you can interpret them for
But
us.
no, I mean, again, going back to my experience with China, but it's not specific to China. It's specific to many traditional societies and ethnicities where there is a really profound connection between the young and the old. There's the young respect the old, and the old nurture the young. And that's the way it should be. But that's totally broken down in our society, where the youth are basically rootless because they've lost their connection to the community, and the old are basically marginalized. Their wisdom is scorned, and their knowledge is neglected. And the youth, not having access to any of that, are distracted into hedonism and other dysfunctional types of behavior. So reconnecting, the young with the old is a really essential aspect of building a healthy, vibrant community.
Drew, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, again, pulling back to Native American influence and everything, elder wisdom circles. We definitely, one of our goals with the program is to get groups of senior citizens here in Santa Cruz to pair up with a group of youth here in Santa Cruz, and have the youth teach the elders about new technology and different ways they can use smartphones and computers so that they feel confident about doing those kinds of things.
Right.
And then at the same time, having the elders talk to the youth, listen to their problems, give them advice into from their own personal experiences, and also just to create this cross-pollination, caring group of everything, spreading new ideas with the old, and then hopefully, with those two pools of knowledge, you could say, coming up with new, innovative, creative ideas built off of pre-existing success, but with a new spin on it because of the age difference or the different viewpoint that may come from it.
And Dennis?
Yeah, just another way of looking at that is developing an ethos in which the young serve the old and the old mentor the young.
Yeah. I think that's a point well taken. When we are trying to get the word out for various social economic justice events and rallies and whatnot, the only way that we can reach the older generation activists in Santa Cruz is by email. And the only way we can reach the younger generation activists in Santa Cruz is by Facebook. And there seems to be no, melding of the ways because because they seem to not either take advantage of it, are resistant to the technology, don't think that it's something they feel like they want to learn or is going to benefit or enrich their lives, or whatever it is. But you really need to kind of have a veneration for the old, but yet the respect for the young, and have them together doing these projects. And we noticed today, again, at the wonderful kickoff party, Pat Arnold was there. Pat nearing 90 or nearing 90.
Almost 90.
And she was there as young and as vibrant and as engaged as any of the young people there. And if that is the model and the template, that you want to inspire amongst folks, then I think that's you're moving in the right direction. So I know that a while back you had talked about a couple of different events that were leading up to the Social Justice Conference. Is something you can share with our viewers to kind of let them know what kind of continuity is moving through all of this in terms of events and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this coming up in February, we're going to be putting together a discussion forum led by Professor Etler here about different forms of democracy, as well as democracy versus corporate oligarchies.
And they say that democracy is the very worst form of government, except for all the others.
Let me, no. Let me interject.
Okay.
Here
we go. Brother.
We have the mistaken notion in this country that democracy equates with what we have in this country. That democracy is basically electoral, representative democracy, and nothing else fits the term. Well, there's all sorts of models of democracy. We're familiar with participatory democracy, like what was practiced, say, in the 60s or with the Occupy movement and whatnot. But there's what's known as consultative democracy. There's monitory democracy, not monetary, but monitory, where monitoring democracy, using the internet and other modern forms of technology to basically give people a voice. And deliberative democracy. Now, I'm not going to go into describing what all these are.
That's what
that's why you're going to come to the forum. But there are all sorts of models and paradigms that are quite different than the representational sort of democracy, which has been totally co-opted by the corporate oligarchy. I mean, there was a recent article from I forget which school, university, maybe Harvard, is saying that there's no real democracy in this country any longer. It's an oligarchy, plain and simple. So we have to come up with new models of democracy with the technological tools that are available, the ease of communication. There's many ways in which the people's democratic voice can be expressed, and that's what this forum's going to be all about.
And of course, this is just a taste of what we can look forward to. So go on.
So that's in February, and then in March. So you mentioned briefly before about our quarterly gatherings that we're planning on having. And so just so everyone knows, we'll be having those on every equinox and solstice. So spring, winter, fall, summer, and the next one is in March. The spring solstice is on March 20th, but that's a Friday. So in order to make sure that everyone can come, we're going to schedule it for that Saturday, which is the 21st. And it's just going to be a chance for everyone in the community to come and check in with Pollinate, get a chance to see the programs that we have going on, the opportunities for volunteerism, as well as give the local organizations a chance to come out and engage the community, table and hand out information, potentially get some new volunteers and let everyone know. And we'll have music, we'll have dance, we'll have art, food, and a bunch of different activities for people, a kids area so everyone can bring their kids and don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. And just make it so that we can have a really community-driven event with a positive impact on everyone's kind of awareness. And we'll be having little discussion groups and everything. And we'll also be doing just so much with regards to that. And then moving on, we have a bunch of stuff planned so February is the discussions, March is the first first quarterly gathering, and then we have the Social Justice Conference in April.
Right.
So for the next 3 months, at least once a month, we have something going on for the community to get involved and engage with. And most likely at the end of February, we'll be having some sort of fundraiser for everyone to come and be a part of. Either it'll be a benefit concert, because we're working with a bunch of different bands, some kind of a event for people to come and get engaged, learn more about the organization, and maybe get involved.
Yeah, and lest folks think that this is just something that you just made up and were very uncertain about how it was going to be. You have a budget that was in here, and I think this is really fundamental to letting people know how serious you are about putting together a program that is going to be real and sustainable, and it's going to really be able to confer the benefits to the whole community that we're looking for. So tell us a little bit about your plans, your budget, your plans for facilities and things like that.
Yeah, well, we're looking, as far as facility goes, we're looking at a fantastic location in downtown Santa Cruz. It will operate, and it will be our hive, essentially. And what it will do is we'll have a bunch of different activities that will be coming out of that location, as well as art and music and activism awareness, workshops and stuff. So that's in our office space, which we're working towards raising enough money to get.
Right.
And then beyond that, we know another aspect of Pollinate, which we really didn't touch on that much yet, is the research side of things.
Oh, please.
Yeah, because while Pollinate is a community organization that focuses on doing outreach and volunteerism and programs and events and all that wonderful stuff too, we have a really strong opinion that you can't do any of that without solid data.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and so on that note, we are also a research group, which is one of our primary causes. And so what we do with that is we will be gathering relevant social data from a bunch of different sources and analyzing it, creating reports, and using that to steer a lot of what we decide on doing here in Santa Cruz based on the feedback that we get from the community. So in order to do that, we have a budget set aside for our research, of course, that requires getting tablets, wireless internet access, database servers, all that kind of stuff. So we have about an $8,000 budget for that in our budget. And it just continues with all of the other things that go into creating the organization. Right now, we're looking at about an annual budget of about $57,000. And that's with no staffing costs, so no one's getting
You'll
paid.
be certainly writing grants and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
doing that kind of
We're
thing.
submitting grants. Actually, this week we're submitting a couple of different grants to
Good.
some different
Excellent.
organizations and foundations, which should be really good. And we feel like just because of the model, the recommendations that we have from leaders in the community, as well as just the need for this service, that we will, we're hoping, we have our fingers crossed that we're going to get as much grant money as possible so that we can supplement it and then fill in the rest with our fundraising.
And
Well, one thing that we really haven't touched upon is the type of activity that we have engaged in with the community. And we've really been engaged in a number of ways. One has been to identify problems and issues that have been neglected by other agencies, or just they don't know about it.
Right.
For instance, the dental hygiene program at Cabrillo. Now, this program is a godsend for many, many people, particularly women. 90% of the enrollment in the dental hygiene program to become a dental hygienist are women. 50% of them are Latina. So you're talking about a program that serves a community that has been underserved within our
Historically, absolutely.
state and nation. Dental hygienists make a very good living. And the program at Cabrillo is extremely well regarded. 95% of those who go through the program and graduate are placed in very remunerative jobs that average $80,000 a year. Well, Drew went to the clinic and wanted to use
Denti-Cal.
Denti-Cal, And they said no, they couldn't accept it any longer because of the budget cuts. There was a $200,000 budget cut this year, which was basically going to lead to the disestablishment of the entire program. Staff was being cut, practitioners were being laid off, the whole program was basically on the chopping block. Well, that just was a no-go as far as Drew was concerned. So what he did was he mobilized the Cabrillo campus to fight back against these cuts. He conducted surveys, to show that many people were not aware of the dental hygiene clinic, the free or very low-cost service that it supplies for training purposes, and that once they were aware of it, they said they would certainly utilize it. So there had to be more publicity about the program, so that people would be aware of it and would not allow it to, be.
And so the upshot
cut.
of this was?
So besides that, Drew did petitions online and paper petitions. He researched the whole issue and basically compiled an executive report.
Executive summary.
And basically mobilizing the community, presenting it to the governing board, led to the program being funded so that it's going to continue.
And that's wonderful.
That's sort of the model we have
Of
for
course,
community
yeah.
activism.
And that's,
That is the Pollinate model.
And there's the research cell, the community cell, and the resource sharing cell. So this all is very structured in terms of being able to be effective. To be a model that's a working model for everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. Thank you, Dennis, for bringing that up, because it is important to realize that, I identified that issue because I was not going to, because they weren't taking Denti-Cal anymore. But we used the exact Pollinate model of what we're going to be implementing in the rest of the community.
Yeah.
And from that outreach, from the awareness that was raised from it, they were able to find someone that donated $100,000 to the program, which made it so that no cuts had to happen, and it gave the teachers and foundations another year to find it out. So if anyone wants to get in touch with us or has any ideas or fantastic things, you can totally get a hold of us at projectpollinate.org.
Yes,
You
indeed.
can send us an email at contact@projectpollinate.org, or if you're on Facebook, you can go to Project Pollinate SC at Facebook. So
And I have liked the
facebook.com/Project
Facebook page myself, so that's wonderful. No, I really wanted to mention that and had forgotten to do exactly that, to talk about the dental program that you were so instrumental in refunding after it had been partially defunded.
I have
at
a
least,
beautiful letter of recommendation from the head of that program for funding.
But it is a real-world example of, as Dennis is saying, to identify issues that may have not been captured anybody's attention or imagination, and to be able to apply a model, a template, to be able to take some concrete, effective activism to get that done. And that's simply what has happened with that, and hopefully certainly will happen with the Project Pollinate itself. It's a wonderful project. We have a few minutes left. Just as we finish the program, what would you like to tell our listeners about Project Pollinate, if you had a couple of minutes just to summarize, a call to action for them and just a presentation from yourself about, what you think is the future holds?
Yeah, I would say to anyone that if you have a problem with the world, or something bugs you, or there's something that you think needs to change, the only way it's ever going to change is if you do it, is if you stand up and make your voice be heard. And so that's what we're here to do, is that if anyone, young, old, male, female, gay, straight, black, white, any color, whatever, if you feel like something is happening and you want to see it changed, contact us, because that is what we do. We help to identify problems, we help to empower individuals who feel like they don't have a voice, and we aim to make real, lasting, progressive systemic change.
Yeah.
So contact us.
And Dennis, what would you say to the folks out here listening who want to do something to engage with Project Pollinate?
Yeah, well, I would echo what Drew just had to say, but also add that what we want to do is build a cohesive community dedicated to addressing problems and issues of social, economic, and environmental injustice. And that by coming together under the umbrella of Project Pollinate, we can forge that community awareness and cohesiveness that seems to be lacking, not only in Santa Cruz, but throughout the entire nation.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful to be able to have you here, and as I say, hopefully not for the last time. We look
Thank
forward
you
to
for
really
having us.
talking to you again as this program develops and it gets to the point where people are engaged and excited as I am about it, and as people should be, in terms of, I think, Dennis, you pointed out, well, there are issues in town of importance that simply are not being addressed. There are things that need to be done here as a community of one, that we can do together. And I think that perhaps by using the Project Pollinate model, by using the Project Pollinate energy that I see, that we can really address some of the problems that our community really is experiencing right now. Once again, I think that it's important for people to have your contact information. Say that again, please, so they know. And
www.projectpollinate.org or contact@projectpollinate.org. Facebook.com/projectpollinatesc. And thank you again, Steve. I really appreciate it.
well, it's been great. And once again, I do want to mention as we go out the various things coming up. You can listen to the Democratization of America from the excellent Professor Etler. We can go to the Social Justice Conference. And again, I can't say enough about the Social Justice Conference when I was there last year representing the ACLU. It is a wonderful gathering of people. There are people who are there or who are sharing all of their experiences, who are speaking out on the various social and economic justice issues that are very much at play in our community and regionally and nationally as well. So anybody who hasn't had that experience really should go. It's a wonderful venue at Cabrillo. But that in back of Cessnon House, it's a wonderful opportunity for people to have their individual organizations represent and talk about that. I know, Dennis, you were there last year, I think, with SCORE, and our chairman of SCORE, Dennis, and I, of course, as you know, sit on the steering committee for the Santa Cruz County Community Coalition to Overcome Racism. And our chairman, Simba Kenyatta, was there speaking last year. And Simba, as you know, is the kind of guy, he was out in the community all the time speaking about these things. So thanks again. This has been Steve Pleich, Voices from the Village, and tune us in next Sunday, a week from Sunday, where we'll have another wonderful show. And once again, thank you to our producers, Charlie.